thinking about you all and just praying for this group and what I want to share, God is just like constantly just birthing some things that He wants to share with you guys. And it became like a 3 different sermon. And I'm like, God, I only have tonight. And so He's like, well, then make it into one sermon. And so I've been like making all 3 sermons into one. And so I'm going to do my best to just kind of walk along with you what I really sense God is doing. Here's the reality. God really, in His kindness and His love, does not want you to settle with the Christian life that you know it as now. There is so much more to the Christian journey, and He does not want you to settle. He does not want you to think what you have now is all that there is to life with God. So I'm going to actually share with you just the simple message about just what it means to walk with God, like life with God. And yesterday we talked about how if you have misunderstandings about who God is, that's going to significantly change the way you walk with God, right? Were you here yesterday for that? And so today I'm going to talk about, so we have to have a correct understanding, the right understanding of who God is. And today I'm going to just talk about this, what it means to just walk fully with God. And I'm going to do my best to explain these kind of 3 messages that God is, I believe, that kind of putting it together. And I just want to say, and I'm going to start with this phrase, name alone is not the identity of the person, okay? Name alone is not the identity of the person. Here's what I mean by that. When God said, I am God, when He showed up for the first time in Exodus, Moses was like in the burning bush, who are you? And God's like, that's hard to explain. And so when God shows up for the first time and God says, I am God, Moses goes, there's about 1,200 gods in Exodus, so which God are you? And God goes, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph. And Moses goes, oh, that God. I'm the God who, and then later on he goes on to say, and I'm the God who is coming in the burning bush. And then later on, as you hear the story, God says what? I am the God who rescued you out of Egypt, right? I am the God. So God explains Himself of who He is through what? Through a story. Here's what I mean. My name is David Kim. Be honest with me. How many of you know another person named David Kim? Raise your hand, right? So more than almost 70-80% of the people here said, you know another David Kim. So if you say, oh, I heard a message from David Kim, the person is going to be like, which David Kim, right? David Kim alone is not identity. Name alone is not identity. God is not identity. David Kim is not identity. My story shapes my identity. Let me say that again. Well, I met a David Kim. He has, and by the way, this is great. David, who is married to Nina. And by the way, I did some research. There's already 300 plus David Kims in San Jose. Right? There's a lot of David Kims, all competing for my name. Right? So confusing. Which David Kim? Right? But if you say, well, David, who is in San Jose, well, again, there's 300 David Kims. Back in the day when I was in New York, in my classroom, there were 2 David Kims. And do you know how the teacher distinguished both of us? One guy was smarter than me, so they would call the guy smart David Kim and the dumb David Kim. It was really sad. Okay, back to real life. Okay. I just got sad for a moment. Okay. Right? How do you distinguish David Kim? And then I looked up, and then, if you say, David who married Nina, and then I looked it up, and there's another family here who has a David who's married to Nina, and they're Koreans. I'm like, that doesn't help. And so you say, David Kim, who's married to Nina, who has 2 beautiful daughters that you've seen, 2 girls. And this same person, David, who's married to Nina, has 2 girls. So how do you differentiate? Then you go, the other David Kim, he is good looking, right? I mean, like you could tell, right? Right? Amen? Right? Everyone's like, no, that's the wrong David, right? And so David Kim, who was born in South Korea, lived in New York, now in San Jose, who attends Westgate Church, as you explain my story, name plus story equals identity. This is really important. This is gonna help your foundational work. Okay, let me say that again, because this is gonna be really important. Name plus your story equals your identity. Did you get me? Just by name is confusing. If you didn't have a name and if you just have a bunch of stories, oh, there's a smart person. Who? That doesn't help either. You need both name and the story to have an identity. So, God himself, his name is God, and Moses goes in Exodus, well, which God? There's 1,200 gods. Well, God plus name plus what? Story. Well, I'm the God who showed up to Abraham, showed up to Isaac, showed up to Jacob. I'm the God who made these promises. I'm the God, and later on, I'm the God who raised the dead. I mean, I'm the God who sends his son. And so as you hear the story, and look at this, the whole Bible is a story of God. Name plus story is identity. And we find out through this story who God is in his identity. Did you guys get me? This is important. So now, if I want to, and this is really simple, if I want to get to know you, I got to first know your name. Let's pick. What's your name? Kevin. Kevin what? There's a million Kevin Lees too, right? So many Kevin Lees. That's a common name like David Kim. Okay, so if I want to get to know you, Kevin Lee, I say, Kevin Lee, what's your favorite food? Ravioli. Well, that's rare, because usually most Korean Kevin Lee would say 양념 chicken, right? Or, okay, so ravioli, that makes you a little bit distinct, right? Kevin Lee, tell me one thing that you are so good at that other Kevin Lees are terrible at. Huh? Puns. See, other people say puns, right? So as we get to, this is great, right? As we get to know your name plus, and this is the framework of this weekend, name plus story. I'm going to pick on somebody. Nobody's making eye contact here, right? I'm going to put, no, I won't. Okay. Name plus story is identity. God says, I am God. He shares his story and all the things that he does that makes who God is. Is this helpful? Does this make sense so far? Okay. Now, I want you to turn to Psalm 100. Psalm 100. Remember, I said God is working 3 sermons in one. My first sermon's done, guys. Okay? That was my first sermon. It's pretty good, right? Okay? So going into the second sermon, name plus story is identity. Now we're in Psalm 100. And it's a short psalm, and let me read for us. A psalm for giving thanks. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates, enter his presence, enter his temple with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and bless his name, for the Lord is good, and his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Now, this identity is really important because that is all that you are. Your name plus your story is your identity. And this identity, and here's the beautiful thing, everyone, that God in everyone, as he was writing a story of himself, he's writing the story of the world, and he is writing the story of his people, Israel and the church. But, brothers and sisters, he is writing a perfect story in each and every one of you. And all the stories that you have in your life, everything in your life, all the stories make up your identity, and that is given and purposed by God. And there is no mistake, there is no chance, and all the stories that are part of your life shapes who you are, right? God didn't make all of us the same. Can you imagine? Right? God made us all differently, all in unique ways. We all have different personality. Some of your farts smell different than others, right? Some of your laughter is weird, and some of your laughter is different. Some of you like certain foods. Some of you like different jokes. Some of you even like different Korean drama. Some of you like different video games. And some of you are engaged in different things. All that you are and all of your journey is all different. And name plus story is your identity. And this identity is, and for all of us, as you walk in this identity, the thing is that the devil comes to cripple all that God is trying to write in your life. Okay? Guys, you guys get me? The reason why your Christian journey is so sometimes boring, sometimes just stuck and stalled in so many areas is because if the devil can mess up your identity, the stories that God is writing in your life, if the devil can make sure that you yourself do not like the story, if you don't like the story that God is writing in your life, then you're going to live a subpar life with God. Do you guys get me? So, if you look at Psalm 100, enter the gates with thanksgiving, and thanksgiving is, and I'm already done with my second sermon. This is great. You guys are so happy. Thanksgiving restores your identity. Okay? If there are things, just examine some of the things in your life. When I was at church a long time ago, when I was in youth group, there was a praise leader like Pastor Mike. And I was so happy, and I was in middle school, and I was like raising my hand, and I was so excited, and the worship leader goes, my goodness, God is in this place, God is here, man, this presence of God is here, and he said, man, God's presence is so strong, I see angels are all here, and then there's about 300 people in my youth group, okay, just imagine, in New York, and I'm just singing, praising, and then my worship leader goes, man, and then my worship leader looks at me and says, Stephen, man, angels are all here. And angels are bringing all of us into the presence of God. But David Kim, you're too fat. Even two angels can't lift you up. Okay? The worship leader is still singing. Worthy is the David, you're so fat. Right? Right? Two angels can't even lift you up. And remember, name, David, plus story is identity, right? So now my story is changed. I am fat and angels are not strong enough to lift me. Jesus, help me. So first thought was, why are angels so weak? And then the real thought was, why am I so fat? And then here's the sad part. I was singing next to a girl that I really liked. And I was like, worthy. And I looked, and she looked, and I could not lift my head. How do I go back to church next week? Because my story is being rewritten, and all of a sudden, now my identity is shaped that I am fat, that I am unattractive, that the angels are tired. And that is my story. It's been 20 years, guys, from that youth group experience. When I got married to my wife 7 years ago, every morning I would wake up, and I didn't know I did this. And you could ask my wife. I would wake up in the morning, and I would look at the mirror, and I would look at myself, and I would always start with this phrase. I didn't know until my wife said it. David, you're fat and you're ugly. You're laughing. I'm so sad, right? But it hurts. But I would wake up every morning and I would just look at myself in the mirror and I go, David, you're fat and ugly. And then it went on for many, many months. And my wife wakes up one morning and I start again. Good morning, David. You're fat and ugly. And then Nina, I think she's tired of it. She goes, David, stop. And I'm like, what? It's like, what are you saying? And I said, I'm fat and ugly. David, you're not. And I was like, I'm not? You're just one of the two. Huh? Which one? No, she didn't say that. Right? She did not say that. Okay. And the story is being rewritten, and all of a sudden my identity is shaped, and therefore I'm constantly cursing myself. Do you guys get me? And so now all of a sudden, wherever I am, I feel actually, when I come in before the presence of God, I feel unworthy and unattractive. I feel like I'm a failure, and that when I sit before God, that He is like, man, David, I got to send you 15 angels this time, right? And for me, the journey is that the story that God is trying to write in my life, all of a sudden, the devil comes with these lies and these brokenness and ushers a subpar story that shapes the understanding of who I am, and therefore, constantly I come into the presence of God longing for affection, longing for approval, and I'm sitting here going, man, I'm not good enough. How many of you sitting here in this room? Maybe you haven't heard Pastor Mike say that to you while he's leading worship. But how many of you in this room have heard certain things that has shaped you to be where you are now, and you have a low self-confidence? How many of you here in this room have just low self-confidence? And so now I'm going to do this. This is not some yay me. No. This is enter the gates with thanksgiving, and in thanksgiving and gratitude, all of a sudden, your story becomes unlocked and your identity gets restored. Ready? So think of, in your life right now, think of something in your life right now, in your story, that you're really proud of. Okay? And think of something in your life, in your story, that you're very proud of and you're thankful for. That you're proud to share with other people. Because what happens is that every good and perfect gift is coming from God, and God is trying to write this beautiful story, but if you're not grateful and if you're not proud of the things that God is writing in your life, then your identity, your self-worth is going to be so low that you're going to have such a hard time living the full life with God. Right?
Bye, Zoe.
You are beautiful. Right? So, take a moment, just pause for a moment, and think of some stories in your life where you may have said something to yourself, or others have said something to you, and you do not enter the gates with thanksgiving and praise and gratitude, but you enter with this subpar understanding of who you are, and your identity is warped, significantly warped. I'm already done with my second sermon. I'm already into my final one. Name plus story is identity. One of the first ways to bring the fullness of identity is through gratitude. Did you guys get me? And I'm going to now talk about the second one. Would you turn with me to Luke? Luke chapter 8. Luke chapter 8, verses 40 and following. Luke chapter 8, verses 40 and following. Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue and was falling at Jesus' feet. He implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years of age, and she was dying. And as Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had had discharge of blood for 12 years, and though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of the blood ceased. And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" And when all denied it, Peter said, "Master, Jesus, the crowd surround you and are pressing on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And when the women saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And she said to her daughter, "Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Now, this story is a famous story, and it's a story of Jesus in the crowd. And this woman had a lot, she was bleeding for 12 years. I mean, guys, think about it. My goodness, bleeding for that many years. Do you know how painful that is? I mean, we just quickly go over it, but I remember when I was playing soccer many years ago. I love soccer. I'm not good at it that much, but we were playing one time, and I was about to kick, and I missed the ball. And I swung, and I missed. But the thing is that there was another person in front of me who was also trying to kick the ball and missed the ball and kicked just the top toenail, and it just ripped and fell off. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Now, I saw the top of the toenail just go, "Bye, David Kim." Right? I heard the toenail say, "Bye, David Kim." And it left me, and right? And right? And just the small blood. Like, I can't even touch it. Can you imagine touching that? Right? When you cut your nail just a shorter, like that pain, but it's gone now. There's no more. And that pain alone is incredibly painful for me. I spent weeks in that pain. But think about just years and years of blood, the amount of pain, that amount of frustration, here it is, that shapes her identity. Gratitude breaks and restores identity. I said that from Psalms 100. And a lot of times, our pain, and when I say pain, I mean, it can mean your physical pain. It could be bleeding, but it could be emotional pain. It could be something that happened in your story. I'm getting there. It could be something that happened in your life or something that you've heard, and that pain shapes your identity, where now all of a sudden you feel like you're nobody. And so this lady that we see in this story is bleeding, and her identity is shaped by just her pain. And she heard about this man named Jesus, that he does wonderful things. And so here's the thing. She goes to him with her pain. And your identity, guys, the way it actually becomes restored and new is that you have to come with Jesus with your pain. And if you come, and so many of you guys just walk into church and leave, and you wonder why God is not doing something wonderful in your life. And it's not that because God isn't powerless. He is not good. He is not thoughtful. He is doing beautiful things in your story. But in parts of your story where there is pain, you have to bring it to God, because if not, that pain will shape you. Man, that pain will shape you. That's why every morning I woke up, David, you're fat and ugly. That pain will shape you. So she comes to the story, and then Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had discharge of blood for 12 years, and all the living, and look at this, no matter what she did, she brought all the physicians, it did not fix her pain. You know, money will not fix your pain. Great jobs will not fix your pain. In my church at Westgate, we have people, I mean, here too at our church, I mean, people who are CEOs and executives at Google who attend my church, and they are still in pain. And I say, well, money, position, they oversee people of hundreds of thousands of people, still in pain. You know, good grades still will not heal your longings of your heart. She brought all these physicians. You know, video games will not fully satisfy. You know that. That's why after you play, you got to play again. And so all these things, and same thing with drama and shows and everything that you do, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's food or whatever, food, I did that for a while too. And I've done all of it. And I say this before you, I have done it all. Video games, pornography, addiction to social media, just staring at Facebook and clicking refresh over and over again until somebody else comments on it, getting into another position at church, all those things that the pain inside. And she brought, the scripture says, she brought all the physicians and it did not heal her. And she came up behind him and she touched the fringe of the garment, and immediately the discharge of the blood ceased. And Jesus said, who touched me? It's not that Jesus doesn't know who touched him. Jesus is God, right? You guys understand that. But and here's the fact of the story. There's so many people touching Jesus, right? It's a crowd. It's like a concert, right? I went to a 소녀시대 concert, right? It's like so many people. I was like screaming up and down long time ago, okay? And there's so many people around him, and Jesus goes, who touched me? And you know what Peter says? Jesus, what are you talking about? The whole crowd surrounds you and it's touching you. Jesus, everybody's touching you. Duh. It's a concert. And Jesus says, no, one person really touched me. And here's the thing. Everybody was touching Jesus, but only one person got healed. Let me say that again. Everybody was touching Jesus and was near Jesus, but only one person got healed. Everybody's coming out to church, but only one person leaves transformed. Everybody goes to the same retreat, but only one person comes back with a new identity in God and God alone. Everybody's near the presence of God and singing and praying, but only one person has a testimony. Do you know why? Because she came to Jesus and she touched him knowing her pain. Did you guys get me? If you sit here like this every week in and out, your identity, your story is the same. But in parts of your story where there's deep pain, you have to bring that out and come to Jesus and let him rewrite your story. It's the only way your identity becomes restored. Once again, gratitude restores and pain, and you have to come with pain. You have to come with pain and say, Jesus, this is where I am broken. This is where I'm hurting. This is where I am lost. Would you touch me? And Jesus, in that story, begins to rewrite her story. And the verse says, 47 and 46, but Jesus says, someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me. In verse 47, and when the women saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling, falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she touched him. Can you imagine? Jesus goes, okay, everybody stop. No one talk. And there's like thousands of people. Who touched me? And she's like, right? And she's like, oh, wait, actually I touched you, right? And Jesus goes, why did you touch me? And she's like, well, I've been bleeding. It's not toenail, it's worse than a toenail, right? I've been bleeding for 12 years and I'm in incredible pain, and I hear that you rewrite stories. I hear that you change lives. I hear that when people meet you, they are never the same. So I've come with my pain and I touched you intentionally with that. Everybody else is just bumping into you and touching you and nothing's happening to them. But for me, I came with a purpose. I came with a reason because I have something where my identity is being shaped by what? That she is untouchable. Back in the days, people who bled, nobody wanted to talk to, nobody wanted to be near, and they were actually isolated, and nobody even touched them. So for her, she's never had anyone talk to her before for 12 years. Jesus, when you come to Jesus with your pain, He's going to begin to speak to you and restore things that you don't even know that you need restoration from. Let me say that again. When you come to Jesus with your pain, she thought she was coming to make sure that her blood stops, but that she was deeply longing for somebody to say, "Hi, how are you? What's your name?" Because nobody has ever talked to her. And in that pain, she comes and Jesus stops the crowd and says, "Hey, let's put you on the showcase. I want everyone to see who she is. I want everybody to take a look, and I want you to all see that I'm talking to her, that I care for her, I value you." You, all of you in this room, you are not a crowd right now in Jesus' eyes. This is not a conference. This is not a church event. Each person Jesus is watching, and He is thoughtful. He knows your story. He knows your pain points. He knows your personality. I used to think the God's love in Christ Jesus is this kind of general love. Like, oh, He just loves me. He dies for me. And He saved me. Like this kind of thing that He did for everybody. Did you know that Jesus is actually interested in what you're interested in? Do you know that Jesus is actually smiling when you make bad jokes? Jesus goes, "Oh, I made him. That's such a bad joke." Right? But I made that personality. You have to understand that you have to get that God is not a generic God. That's what I grew up. But Jesus actually knows your personality, cares about the smallest things. He's not sitting on a stage looking at you like in a crowd. He's not. That's what I thought growing up. But He knows you by name and by your story. Name plus story's identity. And there are parts of your story that needs healing tonight. There are parts of your story that you've brought into the church, but you would refuse to allow Christ to restore you. There are parts of your story where Jesus is longing to change and set you free from some of the things that you have said to yourself, some of the things that your parents have said to you, some of the things that the world has said to you. And He's saying, "Enough, my child. I know that pain. That 12 years of bleeding, I know that pain. Hey, that bullying, I know that pain. I do not want the one that I've made to be bullied. I grew up in New York City getting bullied for years. And Jesus knows that pain." I thought Jesus didn't care. There's billions of people. Does He care that as I'm getting made fun of at church, as I'm getting made fun of at school, does Jesus care? He absolutely does. There are things that in your story where there's some things that your parents have done unto you, even though they're beautiful and amazing and a gift from God, but there are some things that has broke you, and it hurts you even now. There are things that your parents have said. There are things that your parents have done. There are things that your aunts and relatives and boyfriends and girlfriends have done unto you. There are things that in your life, in your story, where I hear the heart of God saying, "Where, my child, is the greatest pain in your life?" Pause for a moment and take a look in your mirror. And where in your life there is a great pain like her, and you come to Jesus and you think that Jesus does not want your pain, but He wants all of you. And because that's why he died on the cross, so that he could take your pain and take your burdens and put it all upon his shoulders and say, come to me, all who are weary and burdened and broken and lost and in pain, for I will give you rest. I will give you shalom and restoration and healing. And if you come to God and if you do this Christian life without pain, you are not doing Christian life. And some of you kid yourself, Pastor David, I don't have any pain. I don't have any pain. I'm okay. No, you do. You're covering that pain with something else. Drugs, video games, media. You're soothing yourself. You're medicating yourself with something else so that you don't have to deal with that pain. Something that have happened to you with your friends. Whatever that may be, God wants it. Because that pain, if you leave it for a long time, it's going to shape your identity and it's going to be, I am just this. I am dirty because this happened to me. I am worthless because of this. I am like this because of what my parents have said. I am like this because what happened at church and school. And those pains, you leave it for a long time, it shapes who you are, and you walk in the world without purpose and destiny, with power and authority, and you walk with this kind of head down. And you just come in like this, and you just sit, and you go up, and there's so low self-esteem, and you just go and you say, God, I'm not worthy. God, I'm not bringing anything to you. God, I don't think you really care. God, I don't think you're there for me. And you just walk in and out. And you wonder, when was the last time you had a genuine encounter with God? And I'm not saying that to shame you. I am saying that is God's heart for you. That He wants you to have the fullness of Him. Fullness of Him. So I really end with this. When I was young, in college, like 19, 20, my parents just decided to say, I have a 6 years younger brother. His name is John. And my parents decided to go back to Korea. And I was like, where are you going? We're going to Korea. I'm like, but we're in America. Well, you could raise John. I'm 19. I don't even know how to raise myself yet. Well, you figure it out. We have to go to Korea. See ya. So they left. And now I'm 19 years old. I have this middle school kid who is looking up. He's like, hello, Hyung? I'm like, hi. And we live together. And in that living together, I did not know what to do. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know how to be a father. I had no idea how to take care of this younger brother. So I started to get 4 jobs because I have to pay for him. He's like, Hyung, I went to school and we have to buy these boxes of cookies. And I'm like, what? Cookies? Why? Okay. And then so I started, now I'm in college, but I don't have any money. So I started getting 4 jobs. And so I started working and making sure that my brother, and back in the day, he was like, Hyung, my friends, all of them have PlayStation. Can you get one for me? How much is it? $300. What the hell? Oh my goodness. And so I had to work another job, and I started tutoring at SAT. I started being a pastor. I went to a hospital and started translation. I was doing all of this to try to figure out how to pay for college and how to pay for my brother. And raise him to the best of my ability. And in all those years as I did, I realized that I made a lot of mistakes because I just didn't know how, and I did the best as I could. But in 6 years of that journey, somehow in that story, I realized that I'm the one who provides for the family. That in that pain of my story, I'm the one who has to take care of my brother because my parents can and it's my responsibility. And that story shaped me, where in my journey growing up from there on, I thought that it is my job to take care of myself in this world. And I didn't know how to face this pain of our parents going to Korea and coming to God with this and say, God, my parents are not here, and I need help, and I need you. And I did not do that. And I was self-sufficient, self-surviving, and that ended up rewriting my story in a place where it took so long for me to undo that journey. And it took me so long to come before God and say, God, I cannot do this without you, because I had 4 jobs and I was raising my brother on my own. Do you see? Just one small story like that. If you refuse to bring it to the Lord and work on it on your own strength, and you do not bring the brokenness and pain to God, it's going to warp your understanding of God and the way you live. And your identity will not be the very identity that God has intended you to be.